what they can do, and then are you guys going to just sit in?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, that's great. Yep, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Jade.
Jaden. Catherine.
You guys know Catherine. So, yeah, we're at the Writing Center, and so we're here to help you with any type of writing that you need to do for your applications. So we're open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and we're going to be in the Writing Center for everything that we do. So 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5 on Friday, and then 10 to 2 in the library on Saturday. So if you want, I can write that on the board.
Yeah, that would be great for the
And
whole week to leave it up there.
Yeah, so whatever writing you have to do for your applications, Catherine is in, so she'd be a great one to have look at your statements. I've written personal statements too. I know Lena's going to, and all of our tutors know what good writing is, so we can definitely help you in one way or another. So, yeah.
Yeah, please use the Writing Center. We cannot stress that enough. They are, free for you guys to use. It doesn't cost you anything. Like I said, all of our staff is willing to read your personal statements, but definitely use the Writing Center. I think the red marker works better, just so you know. Okay, so we're going to talk about writing experiences, and then after that, Rhea will be back in, and she's going to talk about entering coursework. So for this week, I want everyone to think about a weekly challenge. What is your brand? So at the end of the week on Friday, we're actually going to have an alumni from the University of Utah come and speak to us. He's on the med school committee. So one of the things that he talked about was finding what your brand is, which will help you to write your personal statement. So by the end of the week, what we're going to have him do and Rita do is have everybody tell us what their brand is on Friday by the end of the week. So for him, I'm trying to remember exactly what his brand was, but he was saying how he was really into music, and his brand was that he was focused on rural medicine, and your brand is really, who are you? So that's what we're going to be looking for at the end of the week. So we're not going to have all of you say what your brand is, but Rita may pick on a few of you to kind of tell us what your brand is, what you want the school to know about you where you're applying, what your what your mission is, and who you are as a person. So, maybe if you're really into music and that was one of the things that was really important and that's what your personal statement's going to focus on. Or maybe you're really involved in rural medicine or the underserved communities or things like that. So it doesn't have to be like a whole statement, but he said one of the things that he wanted the University of Utah and the schools he applied to know was who he was before they even met him. What were his passions and what were the things that he cared the most about. Why is this not doing that? Okay, so how to write experiences. So the purpose of writing experiences is to highlight how amazing you are, all of the amazing things that you've done, and then show your priorities and what type of a person you are. With medical schools, when we went to the advisor, it's called WAHP, but it's for advisors all of the western states. A lot of things that they were saying was that they're looking for a holistic student. They're looking at the holistic review of a student. Everyone's going to have great grades and a great entrance exam score, and that's great because that'll say that, okay, you have qualified to even be looked at. But once they get to that, if you don't have something special about you that sets you aside from everybody else, you're not really going to matter. You're just going to be one of the masses. So it gives a non-academic sense of who you are as a person. They want to know who you are despite your 4.0 GPA or your 3.9 GPA or whatever it is, aside from your standardized test scores. And then they also want to determine if you fit their school. One thing that they were also, some of the deans from universities were saying was, look up the school, look up their mission, and see if it matches your mission. You want to pick a school that's a good fit for you. I'm sure, Catherine can say this and some of our other students, when you go to a school and you interview and you see the school, you may be there and be like, this is not for me. This school is not for me. It doesn't fit me. Maybe it was my top choice, but it doesn't fit me. So do the research before you apply so you know which schools you're interested in. And then for some graduate programs, I know there was questions about not having enough experiences. Some of them, or having too many, some of them will allow you to do 15 and some of them will allow more. It depends on the CAST system. And you guys probably know, since our awesome peer mentors were able to kind of go over that with you, you guys probably know if you can have more or if you can only have 15. And then another thing for when you're writing your experience is never ever use I. Don't say, I worked at Canyon Creek Services, I helped volunteers. Always start with like a verb, and we'll go through which ones to use. But never start with I. It's just not very professional. If you were going to write a research paper, you're not going to start with I. Same with your personal statement. Try not to use a lot of I. You can, but try your best not to. And for the experiences, don't use I at all. Don't repeat activities or venues in the description. Again, make sure you proofread. These are things you can also take to the Writing Center and have them proofread. You can send that to our staff. You can write them while you're here, and we will look over them for you and tell you what you need to change and things like that. For both your writing experiences and your personal statement, it would be good to have multiple eyes look at them. Don't just say, okay, I only had one person edit this and it's good enough. They said it was good. Make sure you have multiple people look at it, because I can tell you that I've looked at people's personal statements, read them. I've sent them to Amy. She's made changes that I didn't see. And then I've sent it to Rita, and she's even made even more changes that I didn't see and that Amy also didn't see. So have multiple people look at them. And if you send it to one person in our office, we will share it with everybody in our office. So that multiple people look at them, and then we'll send it back to you with all of our edits and ideas. And then be choosy. If you have 17 or 18 different experiences, but some of them aren't that strong, we've always talked about how you can combine them. If you say your family volunteers at the hospital each year, and you only do it over Christmas, but it's for a full day, and you do it each year, you can combine that into one experience. You'll want to say, worked at the hospital and volunteered with my family every year around Christmas time for 5 years. If you have an experience where you only have 4 or 5 hours, try to see if you can combine it with something else. It just doesn't look super great to say, I did 2 hours here and 3 hours here and 5 hours here. And you guys should know that. We talked about that in the first year class, so I'm hoping everybody probably knows that, but in case you have questions. Again, make sure you're using local language carefully. If you're applying to a school on the East Coast and you say served an LDS mission there, you're not going to know what the heck you're talking about. I know because I'm from there, and people don't know what that is. Okay? So they're going to be really confused if you say that. So make sure you're writing out what it is, or this example they have here, served a volunteer religious mission. If you're going to say, I've read some students who've put served a religious mission for Church of Latter-day Saints. You could put that, but just write it out so they know what you're talking about. And then, combine if needed. Resume style, provide enough information to entice potential employers. Kind of the same thing. You're not going to say I, you're just going to do a quick blurb. And if you looked in those, if you had any chance to look in those binders, it's a really small amount of words. That it's only like 2 to 3 sentences that you're allowed to write for your experiences. So you're going to want to be pretty short and concise and get it all in there. And when I was reading them last year from a lot of students, they had a really, really long experience, and then when they went to put it in their CAST system that wasn't opened yet, it was too long. So, make sure you're making it short and concise. You're saying what you need to say, but you're not writing an essay. You're just putting down what you did and what you learned, which we'll have to look through those binders again and see, but I think really you'll only have space to put in what you did with your experience. Some of them it may be more of like volunteered at the Canyon Creek Crisis Center, and then you say what you did, and then learned how to do something. Maybe you learned something new from your experience. And then these were the power verbs to start with. So solved, promoted, oversaw, improved, adapted, planned, managed. All of these are great things to start with instead of saying I. Oh, what just happened? Okay, the projector is turned off on its own. What the heck? That was weird. So all of those words are good things to start with instead of saying I. You can say planned volunteer opportunity, led group of students in learning how to do the Days for Girls Kids. I'll just say that because you're wearing that shirt. So I don't know what is going on. Come on, turn on. And then make sure you're keeping the tenses correctly. If this is something that you've already done, make sure you're using past words. That makes sense. If this is something you're currently doing, make sure you're saying managing, not managed. And then there's examples here, but you can't see them because that all of a sudden decided it wanted to turn off on me. I don't know why. So one of the examples is before it says, I have learned many valuable life skills from each one of my team members. And then what it should say is, developed leadership and communication skills playing quarterback. So it sounds a lot different, it sounds pretty concise, and it doesn't sound like you're in kindergarten saying, I have done this and I have done that. And then same with using proper terminology. What's wrong with this thing?
Do you want me to go get some help?
That's okay. I don't know why it just turned off though.
Could it have overheated or something?
Anyways, so use gender-specific languages instead of saying like mailman. Say what are they?
A carrier.
Yeah, mail carrier, or let's see, there it is. So mankind, humankind, humanity, people, police officer, firefighter, not fireman, or policeman. Just think about how you're saying things. And then the other thing too is, so there's all of these. There's flight attendant, waiter, waitress, server, like I said, firefighter, congressman, congressional representative. So make sure when you're explaining things in your experiences, you're using the correct terminology. And then instead of saying an old person home or an old folks home, long-term care facility. Same with if you're, mentally handicapped, or you should say intellectual disability. I've heard people say other things as well. Make sure you're, being appropriate with how you're saying things. And then the same with, a lot of times the people reading your application didn't go to medical school, they didn't do research, so if you're explaining research you're working on, make sure it's something that they'll understand. I've personally heard you guys talk about research that you've done, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about, because I wasn't a science major, I was a communications major, and I didn't even take any science classes. So make sure you're talking about it in a way that somebody who doesn't know what that is will actually understand that. And then again, most current research terms, medically relevant, like I said, something that people actually understand. And then don't use slang, don't use like BTW or LOL or things you're gonna text. Like this is professional writing. You don't want someone to, and I maybe, you can text that to your friends, but don't put that in your experiences. And then the same thing, don't use acronyms, spell out the whole thing. SUU, Southern Utah University. I think one of the other examples they gave was like the FBI. I don't think anybody's going to have that on their application, but those are just examples. And then things that are common in religious settings. Again, maybe it's common to your religion and to the group of people you spend time with, but it's not really common to some of the people in admissions. And then we remember that we can't use stuff that we did in high school as our experiences. If you were valedictorian in high school, that you can put on there. But other than that, we don't want anything high school. I mean, if it's something that you were doing in high school and you've continued, that's fine. You can put, started this in high school, have continued throughout college. I think that's something great to put on there. And then, like we said, because there's kind of like a huge range for activities. If you've only had 4 hours at something, try to combine it with something else. If you feel like it was a really good experience, for example, maybe if you were in charge of like a science fair or something like that, and it was just a couple of hours that you did that, I think that's probably a good experience that you could list as its own thing. And then you don't want to be looking like you're stretching your experiences, hopefully. Yeah.
Can you put in like a hobby that you're passionate about? For instance, like I did like a cello recital for my Edge project. Do you put stuff like that in that are like maybe not super sciencey, or?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah. No, okay. So it doesn't have to specifically be science. Actually, Andrew King is a good example of that. A lot of his application, he talked about his involvement with orchestra and the Wind Symphony because he was really into music. So it doesn't have to be science related. It can be any sort of experience as long as it falls under the category of research, leadership, patient exposure, job shadowing, or service. That's fine. And then for some of your CAS systems, the experiences will be listed differently. I think for PT, for example, it specifically says experiences, and then you can list it as job or leadership or things like that. So just pay attention to how your CAS system's set up. But as long as it's one of those, yeah, it can be anything that you were involved in. If you were doing something like, you know, raking your neighbor's lawn, that doesn't really count, or mowing their lawn. But if you had a job where that's what you did, then that would be fine. Yeah.
So where certain schools require certain amounts of hours to do healthcare experience and job shadowing things, so talk about describing the experiences in like a couple of sentences, but how do they tabulate like the actual hours that you spend?
So I think most of the experiences in the CAS systems, they'll ask you for the amount of hours. If you look at any of those binders, all of the hours are listed next to the experience. It'll ask how many hours that you did. And then, you know, with patient exposure, each different, so if you're doing patient exposure or job shadowing, you can do a separate experience for each one that you've done. So if you shadowed with this one doctor, that can count as one experience. Shadowed with this doctor, that can count as another experience. It doesn't have to be all in one for those. And then, like I said, like if you have questions, you know, we're here all week, like Rita said. So, you know, just raise your hand and we can answer them. Yeah.
So, for PAs, you know, on exposure hours, are the experiences you put on the only source of hours? Like, if I have 1,000 hours from this job and then 50 or something from another experience, do I have to put each of them in order for those hours to count?
So you mean like they're different experiences? They're not all job shadowing or patient exposure?
Like, yeah, I volunteered at a hospital, which wasn't paid exposure, and I have a job where I earned patient exposure, and I had a separate job where I did 5 jobs.
Yeah, so you'd want to count each of those as a different experience. And for PA, it doesn't have to be paid. Your patient exposure doesn't have to be paid. So that could count as your hours. Because I think in the CAS system, and I could be wrong, but I think that they have a different section for each thing, right? They do what experience is, and then they do patient exposure, and they're separate, aren't they?
Yes.
In there. Yeah, so you'd specifically want to list each one in the category that it fits in. And that goes for all the CAS systems. Some of them may just be experiences, and then you have to list what each one is. And I think for med, it'll ask for patient exposure, job shadowing in separate categories, so make sure you fit them into the right thing. Another thing too is if you have a lot of, say you have a lot of service and you have very little leadership, try to maybe move one of your service experiences into leadership if you can count as that. You want to make sure you have kind of enough of each thing. You don't want to have all of, you know, maybe you have 15 or like, you know, 5 different experiences that are specifically service and one that's leadership. You want to try to make sure you have an equal amount of all that. And then again, like I said, the different CAS systems, it will kind of depend. And then, yeah, for religious activities, do include the clerical work, leadership work, and then what you've got out of experience, and then name what the experience is. Include religious terms specific, don't include religious terms specific to your religion. Again, people will be really confused by that. Count hours, don't count your hours proselytizing as service. So for your LDS mission, you don't want to count the hours that you slept. That doesn't count. If you're counting the whole mission as service, you can only count the hours that you actually did physical service, like you did actual service on your mission. I know some people on their missions, they're like, oh, I built a house, I did all these things that were specifically service, and then some people didn't have any at all, and then it would probably go under the leadership category. And then you're kind of estimating the number of hours based on the hours per week times the number of weeks there. I've seen some of the binders, and I know some people put like all of their hours in one, and it's like 6,000 hours or 10,000 hours is my whole mission. Don't count it like that, because they're going to be like, wait, what? So are you counting the hours you slept? Like if you're counting your mission as service, only count the hours you did service. Same with leadership. If you're counting it as leadership, only count the hours that you held a leadership position. And then this is a good example. Again, this might be even a little bit long for some of the things I've seen in the binder. But they started with a verb, served in rural impoverished areas in the Dominican Republic by providing needed medical care and attention, worked in conjunction with Solid Rock International via mobile medical clinics, and then at the end they say, gained a greater appreciation for the commitment to global and public health efforts. So it would be really good to end your experience with a sentence saying what you gained from the experience, if you are able to fit that in there. But this is a really, if you can see, that's a really well-written way to put down your experiences. Developed a deep compassion for the Dominican and Haitian people, because they did a really good job. They said what they did, and then they also added in there what they got from this experience. Also, if you did go to the Dominican Republic or Panama or any of those, you can count, obviously you're counting that as one experience, not, I was a leader and I also did service and I also did patient exposure. You're not counting it as three, you're only going to count that as one experience. Let's see, if you were involved with like Days for Girls while you were over there and you did work aside from on the trip before, that organization Days for Girls can be counted as something different. Yeah.
So for the trips, how do you count the hours? Would you do like the hours spent like planning, or would it just be like 8 hours a day for the 4 days you did?
It would just be the time that you're there. Yeah, we had some students on their service journals, younger students, count the hours that they were at the airport and sitting on the plane, and that doesn't count. It's specifically the hours that, so for Panama and the Dominican Republic, that you're doing the patient exposure.
What about like getting donations for it? Would that count towards service?
If you spent like hours and hours, then yeah, you probably could, but I wouldn't. I would mostly just count the patient exposure hours. Or maybe if you're counting it as service instead, because you don't need patient exposure or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, did I see another hand? Yeah?
When you work shift work, so for example on an ambulance, you'll have a 12-hour shift, but you're not getting calls for the full 12 hours. How do they want you to count that? Do they want you to count it as all 12 hours for patient exposure? Or
That's a good question.
Because you have no idea if you're going to get.
Yeah, that's kind of hard. I would just count it as the whole time you're there as patient exposure, whatever you're counting it as. I would just count it as one thing, because that's kind of hard to split that up. It depends. Are you sleeping while you're there? Okay, I don't know. We may have to, ask Rita about that, because I'm not.
Yeah, totally.
I think it doesn't count because it's like you're working.
Yeah, because
and it's like,
if you're at work and you're working for Chrysalis and you're spending 3 hours on your phone, but you're still working, it still counts.
Yeah.
So I think you could just count. She's probably right. You could probably just count the whole thing. Yeah. And then, maximum of 3 for most meaningful. I don't know what this one's even from. But this is kind of an example of what it looks like. Experience type, experience name, start date, end date, average hours per week, organization name, and then your person to contact. Edgar was saying that if you worked or volunteered or did something with an organization and the person that you were working with no longer works there, you're not in touch with them, when it asks, oh, can we contact that person? I would put no, because if they contact that person and they no longer work in that position, they're not going to be any help. Like my example was when I was in college, I worked at the Iron County Care Share. I was an intern. When I put that on my application for jobs when I was applying, I was like, oh, well, the person I worked for changed hands, and I don't know him. I don't have his phone number. So when I put on my application, I would say, do not contact. And if they ask and they think it's weird, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And they don't really call your contacts unless it's something weird. Like if you said you were, like Edgar said, if you were a president of a country and you listed that on there, or something really weird, then they might contact the person that you put on there. But most likely, especially for med school, with as many applicants as they get, they're not going to have time to do that. Did you still have a question?
So, can't they contact like a general sort of HR person that can look up your work record and verify that you really worked there for as long as you say?
Yes, and you'll want to let the people know, hey, I'm going to put you on my application. If they call, are you okay to be a reference for me? So you may want to ask them just to make sure they're okay doing that, because if they do call and they're like, no, I don't know that person. Because I have had that happen. I had someone call for a reference for a student. I had no idea who the student was. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know who this student is. And I don't ever know that they worked for me in this office, and I can't give them a reference because I don't know who they are. So make sure that they know who you are if you're going to put them down on there as a contact name, and you say that they can contact them. Just reach out and send them a quick email and just ask hey, if someone contacts you, is that okay? You remember that I worked for you. Hopefully you guys have pretty good connections with the people you volunteered with. And then, so before we get to questions, I actually wanted to just show you guys this one thing. When you're going through your applications, it asks if the area you're from is an underserved area. So you'll go to data.hrsa.gov. I go back. And then, I'm trying to go to the main page. It just brought me to this. If you go to the main page, I think you just have to click on medically or underserved areas, and then you'll just go down here and you'll type in the territory you're from. Oh, you can't see. Sorry, it's on the wrong page. Okay, so you go to this website, and then you'll click on the state or territory. So we're in Utah, and then you can click on the county. So we'll go with I'm trying to remember. So we'll just go with Tooele County. Okay, no data available. Summit County. Oh, they also don't have data. Okay, so it'll list medically underserved area, and there's another one. There was one that also says low income. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Yeah, so low income, but it'll list if they're medically underserved. And I think this is, and then it has it for all the states. So if I go to Texas and I submit it, you can click on the county, and it'll tell you medically underserved area. So if you have questions about that. And then, does anyone have any questions about writing experiences or anything so far today that hasn't been answered? Yeah?
Okay, sorry, your thing wasn't up to remember that. So you have to find shortage areas, and then which one did you use an HPSA find?
SA, you're right. Let's see, I just Googled shortage areas, so yeah, so if you just type in HRSA, okay, I don't know why I did this. HRSA. If you just type in HRSA into Google, and then you click on HRSA, and then you go to Oh gosh, how did I even get to that page? How did I got to that page?
It was data.chrsa.gov.
Weird, I know what okay, it's this one. So this is the actual link, data.hrsa.gov. But there's like, it takes you to a main page first. But I don't know how I got to this. I don't know how I got to this though.
It's fine.
Did you find it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Read us back, so if you have any specific questions. No questions? Nothing so far? Yeah?
So if you're writing an experience and you were just like a volunteer and asks for like a title, do you just put
Volunteer.
Okay.
Yeah, unless you were given a title, which sometimes volunteers are, but. Okay.
What you're volunteering at.
Any other questions?
Volunteer.
I'm happy to walk around and see how y'all are doing and,
Yeah, do you guys have questions about entering coursework? Is anybody, super confused about that? Yeah.
So on the commerce one, if you get all the way down to that, it gives you the option to have a professional do it for you if you pay a fee. Is it worth it?
it's about,
It's like $80 to have somebody do it for you.
It's $69 for the free transcript.
It took me like an hour.
And then
I'm worth $30 an hour.
When it says transcripts as well, are we talking about different schools' transcripts?
I'll
Like if you transfer.
you want me to chat about
Yeah.
transcripts?
Yep.
I don't know. So all of you will have to, you all have the responsibility of getting your
Does this mean no
transcripts
volume?
to your CAS. Does that make sense?
Yellow blinking.
Okay,
Oh, I
so
think
all
it's
of your
supposed to
official
die.
transcripts have to be loaded into your CAS. The way that you do that is in your CAS, there is what's called a transcript request form, okay? So if you download that transcript request form, you have to enter your schools in first, then you're gonna get a transcript request form. Then you have to do that for every school you actually attended. So if you transferred here from Snow College, even though you transferred those courses here, you still have to get the official transcript from Snow College done, and then your official transcript from SUU. Now, if you're doing MD, MDO, and Texas, because you realize there's a separate application service for the Texas medical schools, then you have to do that 3 times for each school. Make sense? So the best way to do is as soon as you open your application, once grades are posted here, is you are going to download your transcript request form. Then you go to the SUU registrar's office or the Snow College registrar's office or the UVU registrar's office and download a transcript request form from them. You match the two, submit them to the university, and they will send your transcript electronically, the official one, to your CAS. Does that make sense? Questions about that process? It's a tedious process.
If it's a school that's pretty far away and you're not really there, is it okay to just mail it?
Oh yeah, you should even here at SUU, you don't even have to, you can do it electronically. Yeah. You're just sending, make sure you're sending the AMCAS, ACOMAS, FarmCAS, CASPA transcript request form that has a barcode and your student number on it with the school's transcript request form.
Do we need to include certifications from other colleges as well? Like I got a CNA certification for Disney, but it's just a certification. I didn't take
I would
classes.
put that as an experience.
Okay.
I would put that as an experience. Yeah.
And I think this has been answered, but the concurrent enrollment, we treat that as
College credit.
college credit.
It's on your college transcript. Yep. Who has BYU language credit? That you clept out of the, yeah, that's a separate breed.
I remember that last year. It was a pain.
And Catherine didn't have that. Usually we ask someone who did that, so give us a little bit of time to figure that out.
Yeah, Peyton Christensen.
Peyton
He was the one I
Christensen.
helped with that. It was kind of a pain.
Could you email him and ask for him to send us instructions?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yep.
We'll get you an expert on that one. Any other questions? I'm happy to walk around and answer questions. I know several of you have emailed me already. Yeah.
For AP courses, if we got credit here at SUU, do we just include the SUU transcript?
If it's on your transcript, yes. Okay, our next seminar, we're not meeting
I think that was it, just to
today.
go over coursework and
Was I doing
task
these systems
Not
today?
today. We can, yeah, that's
Oh, tomorrow.